I'm Dustin Hoffmann of the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and this is Brazil. Come along with me on this series as I tour some of the agricultural areas of Brazil, from Minas Gerais and Brasilia to Mato Grosso and Rio de Janeiro. I will show you the farms, industries, and the people that have forged Brazil into a large player in the global ag marketplace. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this fourth episode in our series chronicling my trip to Brazil earlier this year. I'm Dustin Hoffmann joining you here today. Well, good chance you're going to find some kind of connection to today's episode. Maybe you have it in a cup. Maybe you have one of those little individual pod machines. Maybe you're sitting in a drive-through right now watching this video while you wait for your first cup of coffee for the day. For some of you, it may be an addiction, but I'm not here to judge about that or judge you on your shirts that say you have an addiction, or the cups that say you have an addiction, or even the signs hanging up in your office that say you have an addiction. You know what? Maybe you do have it. Nope, not going to go there. So if you're enjoying a cup of coffee, maybe you had one earlier, or maybe your local Starbucks has already done a wellness check on you because you didn't show up on time today. This episode is going to be for you. We take a trip into the coffee production region of Brazil in Minas Gerais, and we learn about Arabica coffee. We'll go to the Seibt Family farm and learn about their coffee operation. We'll also see some behind-the-scenes footage in a coffee processing plant, and we'll also hear about Matthew and Caroline Cruz's business, Gaúcha Specialty Coffee. So maybe sit back, enjoy a cup of coffee, or if you need to pause the video, no judgment from me, you go ahead and sit back and relax and enjoy the show. But anyway, here we go into Minas Gerais coffee industry. After leaving the Seibt family dairy operation, we drove a little way down the road to visit the coffee farm that the family operates. It caught a lot of interest from our tour group as many stated they couldn't function without a cup or 12 of that little black beverage. Caroline Seibt Cruz tells us a little bit about her family's history with their coffee farm.
We have been producing coffee for over 35 years. We have two areas that we plant this coffee, and our coffee area is located in one of the well-known region of coffee production in Brazil, which is called Cerrado Mineiro. Our coffee crop starts usually at the end of May and goes to August. And we produce 100% Arabica coffee, and a variety is called Catuai.
But when you drive along the roads, you will see a different stage of growth amongst the trees. That's because coffee producers only replace a small percentage of their trees at a time, because it takes 2 years for a tree to produce its first crop of beans, and a tree could produce for 12 to 15 years. It means farmers keep their trees in a rotating state of replacement. And replacing those trees is no easy task.
It's all planted by hand. It's all precision planted. They've got with like these really long strings, and they're measuring it to make sure, because the row has to be just perfectly straight. And so then they're all planting it by hand. It's a very intensive process.
Why is it so important that these trees be laid out so precisely? Matthew Cruz explains it has to do with how the beans are harvested from those trees.
So this raises up quite a bit, so that cab rides over the top of those tall rows.
Yeah, the coffee row go inside the machine.
So you can see you come in here and look at this, and you get a chance. Those rods go in that coffee tree and shake really hard, and it knocks the beans right off. You do manual harvest too?
Yes, the first harvest is manual.
Okay, the first.
Yes.
So the first year, 2.5, you do the first harvest,
yes,
and that's all manual. How many workers do you get to do that?
About 100.
100 people.
Yes.
And where do you get these people?
From near town.
Near towns, and they're just sitting around doing nothing?
Oh, they work in
Because we don't know if you sell someone, a farmer
working
in
in-
Iowa, hey, go get me 100 guys, they're like, eh?
They're working in other crops over there, and eucalypto and
Okay.
planting.
So they're just
eucalypto.
seasonal workers that will
Yes,
go from
yes.
different farms.
So how
Okay.
long does
So
it
they
take
know
from
where
the,
you'll pick them up every day then, or whatever. If you-
Yeah, we bring them with the bus.
You have a bus, you bring them here every day. Yeah.
so how long does it take for them to do a by hand harvest then that first time?
Maybe 40 days.
40 days they work?
Yes.
How many? So 100 people can harvest how many hectares per day?
I think 5.
5 hectares. So it's 12 and a half acres a day. 100 people harvesting by hand.
Do they get paid by the hour or the job or?
We pay for a tree, and you pick a tree, we receive a payment.
Oh, they,
And if we pick 100 trees, we get 100 payment.
so by the actual coffee tree, you're
Yeah.
paying them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Explica para eles que no passado a gente pagava por medida. Tipo assim, 60 litros de café era uma medida e pagava por aquele valor.
They used to pay by volume, 60 liters of coffee.
Aí agora a gente paga por plano.
Now they pay by the plant.
They work 8-hour days, or is it
Yes.
just 8-hour days?
Yeah.
By law, you can't work more than 10 hours.
Yeah.
I got some balls.
So, in Brazil, and that's pretty stringent. That's how it was with us, and it was complicated because the guys would, they were okay working longer than that because they're getting paid overtime.
Brazilian
But the
law,
labor department,
labor work is very.
they would
very
say we're
hard.
protecting the guys, the laborers from themselves as much as you, and so it's a standard 8-hour day, and then you can get 2 hours of overtime, and that's it. No excuses.
Yeah.
When we think about coffee beans, we think of roasted brown beans, but that's not what you see coming out of the field. So what does it take to get from the field to the table? It starts with understanding that the beans are actually seeds that grow inside of a cherry produced by the trees. Then once the beans are harvested, they're taken through a washing process and then put out onto a concrete floor and dried.
So they wash it in those blue tanks there, and it gets separated. So the greener coffee, the more mature coffee beans, have a different weight, and so the lighter ones will float toward the top, and the heavier ones will go down. So they're separating the coffee beans by their maturity.
After 12 to 15 years of the tree's life, it's time for them to come down. And just like with other aspects of the Seibt family farm, they don't just throw away the trees. Once the trees are bulldozed, the wood is then used to be burned for other necessities on the farm.
Crop over there, we take the coffee trees off and plant 1 year of soybeans, and next year, in November this year, we plant coffee again.
So once it leaves here, so this is growing it and washing it and drying it is actually a lot of work. But then from here it goes to a local co-op, and that's where we're going to go tomorrow actually.
Okay.
And that's where they'll take it another step. Well, they will grade it and sort it and bag it, and then it goes from there to a container and it's shipped to a roaster.
The next day, we visited a coffee buyer to see how they run the operation from receiving the beans to getting them ready for shipment. While we were there, we learned about the company, got to see their facilities for sorting and quality control, see the packaging, and even got to taste test some of the coffee.
We export as a green beans because maintain the quality, the aroma, the shape of the bean.
And also the roasting level for company A is different, for B is completely different. So it's difficult to find out the correct roasting level for customer A, because the customer A buys the coffee, but behind it they have more than 30 clients. So it's difficult. So they prefer to buy this way, green coffee beans, and they are responsible to roast the coffee according to each level to distribute to it.
Because if you buy as a green bean, you can roast as a dark roast, medium roast, light roast. It depends the taste of the client, what they ask for.
So before delivering this coffee, we all the time we classify, we identify, and check if the coffee is the correct coffee to deliver to the customer. And after that, aí depois vai fazer o cupping, né? After that, the cup session. So we analyze the aspect of the beans, the grains, and also the cupping. If everything is done okay, so we receive the money and deliver the coffee. So we have stock, aqui você guarda 6 meses, é isso? This is the stock of the cooperative now, but also
Comercial.
comercial, okay?
Não, especial comercial.
The special ones, the qualities, and the commercial ones. So all the coffee that we have as stock represents here. We have here, according to each number, we know the coffee that we have on the...
So these are samples
the samples.
of what you have in the warehouse.
Yeah, exactly. So, but for the shipments, we hold 6 months. 6 months, no? Yeah. This one is the shipment. So we hold the samples for 6 months. If we ship the coffee 6 months after, no problem with the coffee, we are not able anymore to keep.
It was then time to do a cupping and tasting of the coffee. But in this step, you don't actually drink the coffee. You sip a little, swish it around, then note the tastes and subtle notes of flavor, and then you spit it into a bin. For this, I decided to get the opinions of one of our coffee aficionados on the tour.
I think it's a little more intense.
Yeah, like blackberries, blueberries.
I think a little more fruity is what I'm getting over here. Yeah, and that one.
Which one do you think was your favorite?
I think I put a little more fondant with this into the table.
Okay.
Maybe a little more robust on this side. This one is more robust.
Not only are Matthew and Caroline helping with the Seibt family's coffee operation, but they are also importing and marketing their specialty coffee to the United States. They tell us about their company and what makes the coffee grown in their region so special.
We have a company in the US that's called Gaúcha Specialty Coffee. We import all our green specialty coffee from Brazil to the US, direct to our roasters in the US. And I think it's really important to have this direct relationship to the roasters, because then they can, get to know the producer better, meet face to face, and also learn about our operation and farm in Brazil. So our goal is to keep expanding and building more direct relationship to the roasters.
Yeah, I think there's a trend in America where consumers want to know more and more where their food is coming from, and coffee is no exception. Americans like their coffee, they drink a lot of coffee, and so this is a case where the roasters or the coffee shops can meet the coffee producer, and they know exactly where their coffee is coming from, and so they can ask questions and better understand how the coffee is produced sustainably. And so I think they value that relationship. And so
we distribute this specialty coffee from all over the country in the US, and we just came from New York, which was happening at Coffee Fest, where it was amazing experience that you could meet new roasters, enhance our direct trade relationships, and exchange knowledge about coffee in general.
And you mentioned it's Arabica coffee. Now, people see that in the grocery store, maybe don't always realize what that means. And that has to do with where you guys are growing it. Minas Gerais fits right into that category of what you need to be Arabica producers, right?
Yeah, in this region where we produce our coffee, in this region of Cerrado Mineiro in Minas Gerais, is a very well-known region for a very good production of coffee in Brazil. So because of the altitude, that's why the quality is better. You can have a better aroma, flavor, and quality of the coffee.
I just think it's interesting that when your father moved to that region, I mean, there was no coffee at that time, and today it's one of the highest concentrations of coffee production in the world, not just Brazil, but in the world. And because Brazil is the largest coffee producing country in the world, Minas Gerais, the state you're in, is the largest coffee producing state, and then the Cerrado Mineiro region, where your farm is at, is the largest basically coffee production region within that state. And so it's just very fortuitous that your father, when he moved there, didn't obviously know anything about coffee, He was probably thinking more about soybeans than anything, but just ended up, that region being really good for coffee because of the elevation and no frost, because frost is a big risk with coffee. It really can hurt the coffee quite a bit. So, but yeah, I think that's.
He was very passionate about agriculture, and he always believed in diversifying crops. For example, if one crop didn't go well, you have another type of crop that could be as well as the other one. So I think
he was a big believer in diversification.
Well, I've hoped you learned a little more about the coffee industry and the hard work that goes into farmers growing and producing that cup of coffee that you're enjoying every day. Right now, those farmers are hard at work making that harvest and getting those beans dried out so they can go on to the roasters and become the coffee you all love and enjoy. Just like any other facet of agriculture, there are so much more that goes into production than most of us can ever fully appreciate. But we've learned a little more about what it takes to get that from the tree to that cup you have in your hand. Now, there's still so much more to bring you from this trip to Brazil. We'll continue with our part in Minas Gerais coming up in the next episode. So I hope you will join us. And if you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can find them here on our YouTube channel. I'm Dustin Hoffmann on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Thanks for joining us on chronicling my trip to Brazil. Coming up in our next episode, it's going to be a cotton-picking good time as we make our final stop in the state of Minas Gerais. As we check out a cotton farm, we'll see the gin, look at a pile of loose cotton, and see the big warehouse where they store more cotton than you'd know what to do with. We'll see you next time.